the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
All right, we're here now with a first timer of Swamp247. It's Graham Hall. Graham, good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Chase. It's a pleasure.
I'm excited. I mean, with the rain in the forecast here this weekend, I don't actually know how it's going to ultimately unfold. There's no dome. I don't think you're going to be able to play Tennessee, Florida in Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center if need be on Saturday or Sunday if the weather doesn't permit. But we finally are here. SEC play is here, and Tennessee, Florida, they can't get away from each other. Two slobber knockers in basketball this year, one going to Tennessee, the first one going to Florida. We'll see if they meet potentially in the SEC championship game on Sunday, if all things go according to plan for both teams this weekend. But yeah, it's a lot of Tennessee, Florida right now, Graham.
Yeah, that's never a bad thing. Two rivals who I think can't get enough of each other at times and have always traded bragging rights. And it's been a little bit lopsided in the last 2 decades for football here, but that's the rivalry's at its best when these two teams, either one can get the best of each other. And we saw that in basketball this year. And I know that for Florida baseball, they're certainly hoping to take one, if not 2 games up there in Tennessee this weekend against an undefeated team, certainly. So even if they can get just one, I think they got to feel pretty good going on the road up there against them. But this is a great rivalry, and it's always good to break it down no matter what sport they're playing in. It's a riveting one every time they meet on the diamond, on the court, on the field, you name it. It's always going to be an interesting one to watch.
Absolutely. I mean, it's gonna be weird this year. Football, like going late November. Tennessee, Florida, the latest time since 2001 that Tennessee and Florida have played. So, but Tennessee won that game. So maybe this is how we get out of the losing streak in Gainesville, is moving the game down to late November.
Yeah, it certainly is possible. That 2001 game is still something Florida fans talk about. Obviously what happened, in this country's history with 9/11 and that game being moved, and where Florida was in the national title conversation, losing that game, certainly not good memories for a couple reasons for Florida fans. Absolutely. And when I saw the schedule come out, I was a little bit surprised to see them in November face each other, because we're used to this being either a mid-October or early September matchup either way. And now Florida opens SEC play against LSU and then has to take on Texas, play Miami right there in the middle. And so seeing this game there in the middle to end, of November is a little bit peculiar, but I'm excited to see how it shakes out. And it'll just be a little bit different, which is what you want with football, because you don't want the schedule to be the exact same where you are predicting what you expect. You need to see some opponents change, and with there no longer being divisions in the SEC, I think gives some opportunity to do just that. So it's good to see that this year we're going to get a little bit of a different taste, and that at the same time, these teams are going to continue to face each other.
Yeah, and it couldn't be any less of a nightmare than the last time Heupel and company went down to Gainesville 2 years ago, Graham, because that was one of the ugliest, worst games of Tennessee football in this era. So hopefully it goes, maybe just playing here in late November, it goes different. But we're going to talk baseball here on today's program, Graham. And one of the things, I mean, you brought this up of just the undefeated aspect and trying to get 1 or maybe even 2 wins from Tennessee this weekend. What were the odds, Graham, of Florida having the last 2 undefeated teams on their schedule in the same week, right? Hey, get ready. Big boy baseball is here. But I was just thinking about that, where I'm like, you have Florida State this week, and then Florida State, obviously the final 2 undefeated teams with Tennessee. And then you're like, all right, what's your treat? Oh, well, you get to go to Knoxville and play maybe the best team in baseball once again this year.
Well, I think for Florida facing Florida State on Tuesday night, that's good for them, because the competition has not been very difficult to start the season. Yeah, they lost to a UCF team that is better than I think a lot of people were expecting coming into the season. I mean, look what they did to Miami the other night. Double-digit wins over Florida and Miami now to start the season. Give the Knights a lot of credit here. But otherwise, Miami's having a little bit of a down year. Florida faced Air Force, Dayton, Harvard. They have 7 run rule victories here. You're going to need some, I think, tune-ups, because Florida has been able to get by while not capitalizing on the opportunities that they've had. Multiple times this season, they've had the bases loaded with 1 or no outs and have maybe got 1 run, 2 runs here. And you can't get away with that when you're facing some of the top teams out there. You get in a situation like that, you have to have situational hitting, and Florida is going to need to practice that, even if it takes its lumps, against the teams that are at the top of the pecking order here, whether it's Texas A&M or Tennessee, you're going to need for these young guys in Florida's lineup to get some experience here. So I think they're in an ideal spot where they understand the competition is going to ramp up, and what better way to acclimate it than facing two undefeated teams in FSU and Tennessee. And, I mentioned taking one, maybe 2 games against the Volunteers this week. I don't think a lot of people out there thought that they would go into Tallahassee last night and beat the Noles the way that they did. That was a really amplified performance from them. They got great pitching from Billy Barlow, Jackson Barbary. Luke McNeely has been fantastic this season, in my opinion. Maybe not as good as some people were hoping for, but he's been very, very capable. And then Alex Philpott is someone that you're going to see this weekend up there in Knoxville. He only threw, 3 outs there in the 9th against the Noles last night. So he's going to absolutely play this weekend here. And they're going to have rely on some other young pitchers to be able to step up. Matthew Jenkins, Nico Janssens are going to have to be called upon this weekend, especially with the injuries that Florida is dealing with, which this is another really, it's a novel year in baseball, as it is with a lot of other sports, because for the first time, you're going to get these SEC mandated availability reports that are going to go out there the night before the game. And we're actually going to know, in a sport where coaches, managers, whatever you want to call them, are usually a little bit, closed off when it comes to discussing injuries, especially because guys are going to play through things a lot of the time here, and you don't want to really reveal a guy is dealing with a, elbow strain or whatever you want to, call it. You're going to have to disclose that stuff. And for Florida, they're missing a couple guys who would be in their lineup, who would be pitching on Saturday or Sunday, and now they're going to have to disclose those things. So it's really intriguing from all those aspects of it. How Florida's going to manage the bullpen is one of the intriguing factors in this contest.
Well, it sounds like it's different. It's very different than what Tennessee's dealing with in the rotation and bullpen. I mean, AJ Russell will not be around until April, so that one, we'll see if he ends up getting stretched out and ready to go for that Sunday spot. But I mean, you got Liam Doyle, who has just been an absolute assassin on Friday nights here, a couple days out. You've got Marcus Phillips. He's settled in on the Saturday nights. And I mean, they've been, knock on wood, very fortunate in the injury department in the rotation and the bullpen. So when you think about what Tennessee is bringing to the fold here against the Gators, and when you look at Florida, as you just talked about with their injury stuff and a lot of new faces and some key transfers this offseason, what is the matchup that you have circled that you feel pretty good about, or you're most curious about with Tennessee and Florida this weekend?
I think it's a good opportunity for Florida on Friday. I mean, Liam Peterson is pitching like one of the best in the nation right now. I mean, he has just been lights out for Florida. Really, last year was thrust into not really an overwhelming situation, but a tough one for a rookie pitcher to come in and handle. Mentally needs to acclimate himself. And when you go into being the guy right away here and dealing with the emotions, and you're pitching in front of 6,000 people and in front of hostile crowds, and 4 times a week you're facing a difficult opponent, it can be tough to manage here. And there were some mechanical things that they wanted to work on with him in the off season as well. But throughout fall ball, and especially after the season, he's worked on his mechanics and has really a much better mental approach, where he's not getting down on himself if he only goes 4 innings. If, teams just manage a few hits off him, he's not going to be thrown out of his game here. And he's shown that he can settle in even when his pitch count gets into the 70s and still maintain that high velo in the mid 90s, upper 90s. I mean, this is a guy who just looks far and away better than he did at this point last year. And that's why there's already this talk about him being a potential first pick off the board in the 2026 MLB draft. And so I do think that for him, with the way that Florida's lineup is positioned, and given the injuries that they have for their starting pitching for Saturday and Sunday, that's Florida's best chance in my mind. You're going to need to have a capable offensive performance and get some hits and not leave too many guys on base and capitalize. And then if you can get good relief pitching and Philpott can come in and close it out, you have a really good chance, I think, against this Tennessee team, as good as they are, as great as they are, of course, on Friday, because everything else from there is a little bit uncertain with the injuries that Florida is dealing with. So that is their best chance. I'm interested to see how Liam Peterson maintains the start to his season, just because he has been outright dominant at times this year. I mean, he started off the year with, I think, over 10 strikeouts, has just been lights out, absolutely. And it's important for him moving forward that he continues that upward trajectory, doesn't let his confidence wane, and that Florida takes advantage with him on the mound on Friday.
You mentioned the lineup. Where are they most still unsettled in the 1 through 9 right now?
Yeah, I think there have been some changes a little bit with the leadoff role. We've seen several guys used. Kyle Jones, a Stetson transfer, started the season as Florida's leadoff hitter, but he was dealing with an injury to start the season, and now he's been shut down for the entire season. And so you have a guy, a center fielder who they've had to make some changes to, and they've used Justin Nadeau at times, another in-state transfer who was the leadoff guy against the Knolls for the midweek contest this week. And you've also seen Hayden Yost in that spot as well. Hayden Yost is a really remarkable story. He had a great run in the College World Series, but suffers a torn ACL in late May, and he was fully ready to go by the beginning of the season and has looked really, really good. He's seeing the ball well, and I think that he's poised, even though he was, pinch hitting the other night. I think he's poised to, on any given night, maybe make a start there in right field and be Florida's leadoff hitter. I think that is also, probably the biggest question mark is the outfield at times. Ty Evans hasn't had a great start to the season, but they've got a lot of confidence in him at right field there. Just has to continue to make smart plays and not make the mistakes that we've seen. Probably a couple more mistakes than you would like to see, but certainly a talented guy. So that right field, center field is interesting to me to see how that continues to shake up and who Florida has as the leadoff guy. If it's Nadeau going forward, I think Nadeau is probably the best bet to be their leadoff hitter on Friday night. He had that role against the Knolls, and he looked really good in that spot. Looks comfortable, gets you on base, hits up the middle well. Good, base runner as well. So I do think that it's kind of funny. He's actually probably been as good a base runner as he is. He's probably been their weakest link when it comes to stealing bases. I mean, he's been caught stealing, I think, twice now, maybe 3 times. I'd have to go back and look. But this is a team that had, I think, 46 stolen bases last season, and they're already over 30. So they're going to absolutely eclipse that. And that's something that you have to watch out for when you face Florida, absolutely, is because they're going to capitalize on opportunities to, get extra bases there. They've been picked off a few times, but more often than not, they can easily turn a single into, a double real quick there in the blink of an eye if you don't have a talented catcher who is ready to make that throw and make the tag there. Florida's been really good at that this season. So the leadoff role and the outfield there at center field, right field is probably what I'm most intrigued to seeing the rest of the way.
No Cal Stark behind home plate this year. One of the best defensive catchers in baseball. I mean, Cannon Peebles, great offensive player. Stone Lawless going to be a really good player behind him at catcher too. So, I mean, they're both going to play, and I'm curious now to see what that looks like in terms of pickoffs. And I mean, Cal and Tennessee was aggressive with that last year, and I'm curious with Florida coming to town this weekend how volatile that gets, because Florida's going to challenge them, and Tennessee's catchers, their new catchers, are going to be challenged to keep these guys on first base and to avoid those singles that turn into doubles pretty quickly. So when you've been thinking about this series this weekend and you're preparing for Tennessee, the first big contest of the season of conference play for Florida, Graham, what's your biggest question? Like when you're looking at this roster, you're looking at this lineup, and you're looking at how this series is going to go, what are you most curious about? I might be able to answer this for you, Graham. So what are you most curious about with Tennessee baseball right now?
I mean, just the high expectations more than anything. I mean, this is a team that is expected a lot out of right now. And you mentioned it. They're fully healthy. They're taking advantage of, I don't want to call it a stroke of good luck, but a lack of misfortune, so to speak here. And they've dealt with success so much over the past 18 months. How is this team going to handle when things go wrong? How are they going to handle if they're facing a deficit at home and the first loss happens? And, I think Tony Vitello is a fantastic coach, but, high expectations can make some guys do some crazy things here. So how they're going to handle that when it does happen and how they're going to regroup is probably my biggest question when it comes to Tennessee potentially being a repeat team. maybe that sounds like more of an intangible than necessarily focusing on a apparent weakness of their roster, but it's hard for me to nitpick right now when it comes to a potential issue for this Tennessee team, because just they're so solid at everything they do, and what they're not solid at, they're exceptional. So for Florida, if they don't get great pitching out of their bullpen, if their relievers struggle the way that we have seen at times this season, especially, go back to that UCF game from last week. If you get another performance like that, then you're facing a potentially embarrassing double-digit loss to a conference rival here. So if Florida can get that and they can play confidently against Tennessee, I think that they have a really good chance here. And how Tennessee responds to that, if Florida perchance takes the Friday night contest, is going to be really intriguing for me to see, because a team that hasn't experienced a letdown like that right now, and how they regroup and battle through that, is probably one of those storylines, so to speak, that I'm looking for in this matchup.
Friday, I mean, every ball fan listening right now is like, if I was not thinking about going on Friday night to Lindsey Nelson, I'm going now. Graham sold me on this matchup between the two Liams and what this could mean for the rest of the series. I mean, Florida, they're undoubtedly a top 10 team. The SEC is once again loaded at the top. It is interesting that some people still have LSU ahead of Tennessee in the polls. It's like I don't know what else Tennessee has to do at this point. I guess sweet Florida, maybe that started conference play, maybe that will push them up to number one. But you make a good point about like the expectation part of it, and I'm kind of curious because Florida is. I mean, that's a great win on Tuesday against Florida State, who is one of the, I think, 5 best college baseball teams this year. Gave Tennessee problems last year in the College World Series. Link Jarrett has just been a thorn in Tennessee's side, going back to when he was at Notre Dame and that upset win in the Supers in 2022. But when I look at this series too, I don't know. Like, is it, if you get through Friday and you are able to survive and win a close game against Florida, are you looking at that where it's like, oh, this series can get away from Florida? Because that's what it sounds like to me, is like if Florida really needs to set the tone on Friday and kind of stun Tennessee a little bit and get a win, versus if Tennessee finds a way to handle Peterson on Friday, then it's like, oh, this is pretty ominous for the rest of the series, where it's like that's your best shot, and now this could get ugly in a hurry.
That is how I feel. I think that for Florida, they're dealing with potential, I don't know, short-term injuries, but potentially a long-term injury to both of their starting pitchers for the weekend. I mean, Jake Clemente is dealing with a little bit of a lower back injury, and he didn't go last week. Aiden King went last week against Harvard and looked really, really good. They think Aiden King is fantastic, and we'll find out here Thursday night with that availability report, or maybe not till Friday night, whether it is King that goes for Clemente. And then you look at the situation with, Pierce Coppola, just an unfortunate one for him. He was missing for 2 years due to injury, finally comes back, makes that Sunday start in the weekend series to begin the year for Florida against Air Force, looked really good, struck out 11, just, a 6'8" guy who has great stuff, kind of reminds you a little bit of Randy Johnson. And now it's apparent that he's dealing with either a shoulder or an elbow injury, depending on who you ask. If it's an elbow, it's one that they've gotten some second opinions on, and they haven't provided a timeline for him returning, which, without updates on what it is and a potential return timeline, I know that, like I mentioned in the beginning here, that coaches are going to be secretive and they're going to keep some things and protect players and kind of hide some information. But the longer that goes on without an update or a return timeline for him, I think the more concerned you have to be. So whether it's Matthew Jenkins on Sunday, they have a couple of capable pitchers that they feel good about. If you can get Jake Clemente back, I think that Florida would really, really like that. But Jake Clemente has, 2 really, really good pitches, but he's shown at times that he can get a little bit roughed up. And I think that if he's not at full strength, who do you go to if he's unavailable? And you're looking at some underclassmen taking the mound against the number 2 team in the nation. Like you mentioned, a team that has a case absolutely to be the number 1 team in the nation. So if Florida does not get that win out of their ace, then I do think you're looking at a potential sweep, just given the injury situation that Florida's dealing with. And, he's not the only one. I mentioned Kyle Jones Cade Kurland, who is one of Florida's best players, remains out with an injury. He suffered a dislocated shoulder in that weekend series against Miami. And, he's one of your better offensive options there, a really good infielder. And without him, Florida is missing another potential starter. That's 4 starters right there that began the season that we could be talking about being out for this weekend series against the Vols. So for Florida, if they don't get a fantastic performance from Peterson on Friday and capitalize on it at the plate, then you are definitely, in my opinion, seeing their chances of getting a win in this series declining. Not to be a downer here, but I just think that given the other situations, with the starting rotation, that's just the reality for Florida.
Well, it's going to be a great series nonetheless. I'm excited because I don't know if you're like this, but man, these non-conference games, when you're an SEC fan, writer, podcaster, whoever, man, it gets tiresome. Like, no offense to the St. Bonaventure Bonnies and everybody else who comes through, but the northern teams who can't play in the north in the early part of the calendar, you're like, all right. I mean, this is we're borderline 20 games here, and this is tough. The hours are adding up. I want some real competition. So SEC play is just unlike anything else. And how much the sport's grown in like the last 5 years is just preposterous. Like what the difference is between so many different fan bases, not just Tennessee. Like Tennessee is obviously expanding and a whole lot more seats this year and all that kind of stuff. But like Florida, been a powerhouse for years, but I mean, they're strong. I mean, Jack Caglione and all those dudes, like there's just so many stars in this sport now in this conference that it's just, I mean, it's kind of like a great appetizer to the Major League Baseball season as a Braves guy here. But it's like, I kind of love the time when it comes through and just how much every fan base really across the SEC is now very much invested. Like Georgia's now invested in baseball, so they're in the top 10 and fans are packing Foley Field. You just, everywhere you look around the conference, it's like SEC baseball is a big deal. I think there's a case that it's actually kind of like a more rabid fan base than college basketball in the conference. Even as good as they've been this year, I think baseball is, maybe it's just the time you spend with these guys is different because you get whole weekends and you're just, it's a long year. College baseball is a long year and there's a lot of games. So you're maybe a little bit more emotionally invested, but college baseball is just, especially in the SEC, is just, it's a hornet's nest everywhere you go. It's so much fun every weekend. And I can't wait for this weekend.
Yeah, it should be a really good one. This is probably the best time of the year, in my opinion, because you have spring camp and football, so you can start getting excited about football again. You've got March Madness going on. You've got SEC baseball. I mean, it solidifies the argument. If you got to tell your wife or your husband out there that you need 2 TVs, maybe 3, this is the argument you can make that there's some games going on right now that you can't miss. I mean, Florida is going to be playing basketball in the SEC tournament while their baseball team is over in Knoxville taking on the number 2 team in the country, and softball is going to be going on and spring practice is going to be going on. I mean, this is the time of the year where, no offense, those vacations have got to wait, honey. You have absolutely got to lock in and watch until at least for basketball, the middle of April. But we're in the time where baseball is going to be going until late June for both these teams, hopefully. And it's just a fantastic time of the year. And then it really makes the wait a little bit easier for football as well. So if you're not invested, I absolutely think you should be. The SEC is obviously never been deeper right now with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma, of course. But the amount of teams that are just competitive, the parity in the conference right now, arguably never been higher right now. And I do think that, if you're not invested, which I hope, especially at Florida, that more and more college students become invested. Because when I was in school there, it was not one of the ones that we were, lining up for a couple hours before. You obviously have your diehards there, but there are a lot of times where that stadium still has some empty seats, and it's one of the nicest ballparks in college baseball. So you would hope that it continues to grow and grow and grow. And obviously Florida winning the national championship, 7-8 years ago now, it feels like, honestly, just a couple of years ago, but I guess that's what, the post-COVID timeline does to your brain. I hope it continues to grow and grow and grow because it's fantastic. And both these teams have really good teams and they deserve all the support, and especially a little bit of fun trash talking between rivals, especially fun, not anything crazy.
Yeah, fun. Like, should we relegate Texas A&M out of the conference based on this absolute disaster of a start of the season? Are we sure? They're supposed to be SEC, and that I won't lie. Like there is some just like, man, Texas A&M preseason number 1 over Tennessee, and a lot obviously in the finals, and that was a really highly contested College World Series final between the two. But the Aggies, brutal. That is, I mean, doesn't mean they can't turn it around, but what a brutal start to the season for them, and conference play coming up. So we'll see what happens with them, but it's not going to get any easier for the Aggies, and it's not going to get any easier for the Vols, the Gators, and all the other top programs here in the SEC with conference play underway. Graham, what can the good folks check out from you and the team over at Swamp247 this week?
Yeah, a ton of spring football content, baseball content as well. We have live updates from each baseball game. We're going to try and balance it this weekend because I'll be up in Nashville for the SEC men's basketball tournament. So I'll do everything I can to make sure I'm paying attention to all these games. I'm a little bit bummed that, I only got 2 eyes here. I hope I had, would like to have 4 or 6 so I could watch everything going on with Florida and around the rest of the SEC. I'm going to try and get some sleep for these next 36 hours, knowing that, you're not going to want to miss a moment of what's to come this weekend, especially up there in Nashville, obviously going on in Knoxville with this fantastic baseball rivalry. So check out a lot of recruiting content at Swamp247 as well. It's always a busy day, but it's always a great one to be covering a team in the SEC, regardless of who you cover.
This is going to be a great weekend for Florida and Tennessee fans when their significant other walks in the room and like, there's no way they're still on. There's no way. And you're like, nope. They're still on. It's a different one. Like, nope, they're still playing. And they're like, it can't still be on. You can't still be watching Tennessee or Florida. And it's like, yep, that's the weekend. This weekend is just all ball.
Yep, I'm with you right there for sure. It's a little bit easy to get out of town for these as well, so I don't have to feel like I'm, neglecting anyone whatsoever here. I'm already gone, so it's already happening. So might as well watch as much as I can.
There you go. Graham Hall, keep up the great work. Go subscribe, Swamp247 and the 247 Sports Network if you are not already. Graham, we'll have to check back in again soon.
We'll have to do it for sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.